If everybody could rise for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If everybody could remain standing for a moment of silence. We lost Edward Engelbride this week, and I'll tell you more about him in a second.
One other thing I'd like to say, today's the 80th anniversary of D-Day too, so I just want to recognize that as well.
Thank you so much. So before we get started, I just want to touch on the loss of Edward this week and just give you a little background on what this man had done for the town of Philipstown. So Ed served in the military from 1956 to 58, Philipstown Civil Defense, the Board of Elections, tax assessor for the town of Philipstown for 10 years, town board for 12 years, Knights of Columbus, VFW, American Legion. He was also one of the 6 founding members of the North Highlands Fire Department, and he and his wife Shirley served the department for years in every capacity. Edward was the president of the Garrison Gun Club and an avid hunter. I had so many opportunities to hunt with Ed and my father. He was a wonderful, kind man, a wonderful husband, father, and grandfather, and Ed will be sorely missed. So thank you so much for the moment of silence for Ed. So welcome to the town board meeting this evening. I want to start out with a presentation by our Visitor Data Committee, which is Jeffrey Robbins and Phil Kotnak, who are here this evening with us. I can't thank these two gentlemen enough, as well as the entire VDC, the Volunteer Data Committee, for the work that they've done into a deep dive into the data involved into the Fjord Trail. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Jeffrey and Phil, and you guys could make a presentation to us this evening. Sure. Yes, sir.
Thanks. So our names are Jeff Robbins again and Phil Kotnak, and we're the Philipstown representatives on a, I guess now an 11-member Visitation Data Committee. I live on 2058 Route 9D, just between the high school and Little Stony Point. Been there with my wife about 10 years, so we're obviously very, very much in the middle of where the action is for the Fjord Trail. And Phil has lived in Cold Spring since 1963. Currently lives on Route 301, just outside of the village. Can you hear me? Oh, into the, okay. Can you hear me now? No, yes?
What's up, Seals?
Yeah, I think, all right, I'll talk louder. All right. So this is the first time that Phil and I have presented to the board on that work of the Visitation Data Committee, or the VDC. We thought we'd do 3 things. We would outline the activities to date, talking about the reports that we've reviewed so far and where we are. And the VDC is reviewing 3 studies that the Fjord Trail commissioned by by consultants for for assessing impact. So there is a pedestrian visitation baseline study. It's a 2023 baseline count of pedestrians, in the village of Cold Spring, and then also in all of the parks and trailheads adjacent to where the Fjord Trail would be built. So that's to create a 2023 baseline for purposes of analysis. Then there's a pedestrian projections report that we'll call the projections report, and that's intended to project 10 years out what pedestrian visitation would look like in the area, both before building the Fjord Trail and then with the impact of the Fjord Trail. And then third, there's going to be a traffic study. We haven't seen that study yet, so we don't have any data to report on that study at the moment. So we'll overview the activity, then we'll summarize our review of that first report, which is largely done, and then we'll talk about the second report, which has been reviewed one time, and we'll talk about some of the data issues we're seeing with that report and our findings there. And as to the baseline study, the high end sort of conclusion is we are concerned, that's just a count, right? So it's just a matter of like how well did the counts go. We are concerned that because of some bad luck and some bad weather, that count may have not fully captured sort of peak season visitation, particularly to Cold Spring. We've also got some questions about the Breakneck Ridge data that they used.
We had like 7 rainy weekends in a row.
Exactly. And so, to kind of, right. And so to kind of, project that forward, right, they made limited attempts, frankly, to count in October in particular. And so they have very limited counts in October. And so the peak season is, a question. As to the projections, we'll get somewhat technical as to what our issues are there. But there are a number of questions we have, frankly, about the interim report we've seen relating to the methodology, frankly, relating to some of the math, and also relating to the total numbers, where it seems like the projections are low relative to what we're thinking they should be. Now, that's an interim report, and Orca, the consultant for HHFT, has, said, as HHFT has said, that they're going to revisit those numbers. I also note that report was publicized and is still on the HHFT website. So, we'll see what has to be revised there, but it is a public report you can view online. All right, so as to activities today, I'll be pretty summary about this. The written report has more data. We were appointed in July and August last year as a result of HHFT committing to do this coming out of that Haldane meeting in May 8th of 2023. Originally, the schedule was very aggressive. It was supposed to meet like October through December, 6 meetings, 3 reports. That obviously was not met, primarily because of early disagreements between the sponsors of the trail or their staff and the Visitation Data Committee about, one, whether the municipal members of the committee would have independent, separate meetings with the consultant that would be hired without HHFT in the room. And that actually took more time than we would have liked to work out. And secondly, because there was a pretty substantial negotiation about the RFP for a consultant, the budget for the consultant, how much of a consultant resource we would have. Eventually, that was worked out by like November of the year. It did take a period of time, and eventually the RFP went out. A consulting firm by the name of BFJ was hired. Georges Jacques Mart, who is a principal at BFJ, and I think its founder, is the consultant we've been working with, and he's been serving as the project lead for us and as a liaison with the Trails Committee, with HHFT. So that first report for active review, the baseline study, again, that focused on pedestrian foot traffic in Cold Spring and the adjacent parks. That report was provided to the committee in December of last year. We worked through initial review of that in January of last year. The data committee met, we considered the report, we met with BFJ, we provided HHFT with a summary of our findings. They responded to some of those findings, didn't respond to others. A summary version, I mean, they answered, but they made some changes and didn't make others. A summary version of the second report, the projection study, was provided on March 7th. And we studied that during the course of March. We held a meeting with HHFT on March 28th, where Orca, as the consultant for HHFT, provided us oral responses to our questions. They did not give us a written summary of their responses. We still don't have that. Then on April 3rd, that report was publicized by HHFT at a meeting at Duchess Manor, even though we had shared very many material concerns about that report prior to that time. As you all, I'm sure, know, after that, the members of the VDC from Cold Spring, Nelsonville, and Philipstown issued a statement saying that we had concerns about the data that was in that report. And although HHFT said they would further review the projections, and that we spoke out before the process was finished, we weren't given prior assurances that our concerns were going to be addressed. In fact, in that public meeting, HHFT said, whether one of their staffers said that they were comfortable with the data in the report, and while it was still being discussed, they didn't expect the numbers to change that much. So we released our statement. After we did so, we understand that HHFT engaged with the municipal leaders of Fishkill and Beacon. Those municipalities have since been allocated one extra member for the committee, bringing them up, if they fully staff them, to 6 from what had been 1 before, but staff of 4.
The original group had assembled several occasions, and there was no, or there was 1?
1. They had 1, yeah. But they had 4 allotted. They just only brought 1 to the table.
Gotcha.
Now they've been allocated 6.
Okay. And that 1 has stayed, so there's some
Yes,
consistency?
she's a private citizen. She's a volunteer. She stayed, as far as we know. We have not met in the new group. Cold Spring continues to have 2. Philipstown continues to have 2. Nelsonville, I understand, is now down to 1. So now so the northern communities now have a majority of 6. The southern communities have a minority of 5. Things on the Visitation Data Committee are not done by majority vote, and there's the municipal members can report to their own municipalities. So it's not a procedurally consequential matter, but it does change the balance of participation. After that engagement, we got a letter from the staff at HHFT proposing 7 additional meetings, which I think are going to be running through August. Those 7 meetings are partially to go over that first report to give the new members of the VDC an opportunity to kind of get up to speed on the 2023 counts and make their own comments. Then we're going to go back to the projections report, and then eventually we will see the traffic report, which is a very important part of the overall consideration, right? Because we're talking about the 9D corridor. We just don't have any data on that so far, so nothing to work with.
Jeffrey, I have just one quick for you.
Yep.
Have you guys been provided information whether the members of the VDC from the northern communities will be involved with the data from Cold Spring, or strictly the data north of Breakneck, or vice versa? Is there any?
There really isn't a breakdown from that perspective. Again, the 2023 count. So the 2023 count had 2 focuses. One was kind of the whole area, right? So that included, Breakneck, Washburn, Wilkinson, Dockside, Little Stony Point, as well as the parks that are adjacent to the HHFT up in Beacon.
Gotcha.
And Orca separately did its own counts in the village of Cold Spring, and they actually produced 2 reports in that. It was 1 study, but 2 reports, one that was focused on Cold Spring. The committee reviews all of the reports, and there's no, there are no rules about who looks at what data.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, so that's, I think, where we are today. And, we have not had discussions with HHFT or their consultants about how the timing of the VDC relates, for example, to the DGEIS. It's not, we're not the municipality, it's probably not our role, but it is sort of a question as to how, for us, how HHFT is going to time all of that.
Gotcha.
Sure.
Yeah.
Before you dive into kind of the findings, just to step back from what you were saying. So the proposed process from the start was the Fjord Trails consultants, Orca and AKRF, they did this first blush kind of baseline visitor study and a projection study. That came to the VDC. Obviously, a lot of this presentation is about some of the questions of those findings, but from the process then, these questions and concerns are supposed to go back to Orca. They're supposed to revise their findings, present it back to the VDC, and then your consultant is supposed to issue a report that basically summarizes if the VDC, how the VDC responds to them coming back, right, and hopefully notes either agreements or disagreements with, I guess, the goal that we get to some, agreed upon data before the DGEIS and that public comment period. That's how I'd understood it.
I'd say mostly. So, yes, so the Fjord Trail has two consultants, AKRF and ORCA. ORCA is responsible for the pedestrian counts and for the projection study we got. AKRF, is our understanding, is responsible for the traffic data. The process is, after some background presentations, which I won't go into, the consultant who authored the report and HHFT send us the report. We then, study the report with BFJ, our consultant. We generate a list of questions and issues to discuss. BFJ writes that into a memo, provides it to the consultants. They have then come back to us with an annotated version of that memo with their kind of responses, and we discuss it. The back half of what you're saying is actually not that well established. We, the data committee, saw the RFP that went out to BFJ. We actually didn't see the contract. And so, from the RFP, the process that I just described is clearly part of the scope. The idea that BFJ would then write a summary, accepting some of what the ORCA consultant said or not, and then coming to a consolidated view, that wasn't actually so well established as part of the initial tug of war with HHFT over how much resource there was there. The letter we received from Amy Casala does indicate more recently that they are now looking to have BFJ write a report after there'd be an additional round, frankly, of consult back and forth, and that BFJ write a report which they characterize as a consensus report, and we'll see. Thank you. But that's the process.
I'd like to follow up on the process a little bit because I've had questions from constituents.
Yeah.
So I just want to know about how members of the data committee were appointed and if there is anyone who had a position prior to being on the data committee, a position on the Fjord Trail.
I mean, on the Fjord Trail? Not that I'm aware of. I can't speak to that. I mean, Phil and I are volunteers. There are
And
two volunteers from
thank you
Cold
for
Spring.
your service, by the way. This is a huge undertaking.
Thanks.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, my background is I am a lawyer. I'm a partner at Debevoise and Plimpton. I think Phil is a former retired banker. The Cold Spring folks are independents, who I also understand have data backgrounds. Nelsonville, the mayor is for Nelsonville, and there's I don't know what her role is, but there's an independent volunteer from Beacon, I think. My understanding is the new board will also have board members. The new committee will have board members from Beacon and Fishkill.
And just to be clear, if any of you were here last month, the plan was to have ORCA and the independent consultant here this evening, but that request was not accepted. That was deferred. So, and there's some reasoning to that. And I also want to thank HHFT for even assembling this data committee and for funding the independent consultant to do the work for this. So, go ahead, Jeff.
Yes. Okay, so the first was the pedestrian visitation study, and that study really had two purposes. Purpose one, as I've said, is to create a baseline number for basically the parks and the trailheads around the HHFT build site, which are the baseline to project forward visitation. Cold Spring numbers are not. That's because parks and trailheads, you can actually count people entering them in a way you really can't with Cold Spring. And then the second point of that study was to assess current impacts basically in Cold Spring and develop strategies that could be implemented by the village and to the extent that they do, HHFT or New York State Parks to mitigate impacts, right? So part of what they did with that study is tell us about strategies for mitigation, things like wayfinding and messaging. So what they did is they basically took two kinds of counts. One is a pedestrian flow count. Basically, what's the flow of pedestrians across an area and what's the width of the sidewalks that they're flowing through? Or, if it's a park, what's the flow into the park, or a trailhead, what's the flow into or out of the trailhead? The The second, which they call pedestrians at one time, is basically a snapshot of crowding. So on a given location, a trailhead, a park, a block of Cold Spring, how many people can they count just in a snapshot in in a 10-minute interval. And the first was measured by putting traffic cameras in Cold Spring. That was what AKRF did. And then measuring the intersection crossings in Cold Spring. The second was done by ORCA. They came and they manually counted people during the course of the day. The summary data is in the draft reports. Happy to provide those reports to the board. They're not public because they don't yet, partially because they don't yet reflect comments we've given ORCA that they said they would implement. So in consultation with VDC, we had basically two, I think, material comments to that report. First, ORCA used a form of grading called level of service, or LOS grading, that was developed by the highway, like the state highway capacity manual authors. And in grading Cold Spring, using that methodology, they graded the conditions basically A through F, with A being, everything is great, F being basically traffic jam. And for the most part, they graded Cold Spring A to B with some Cs. BFJ, which is expert in that methodology, observed that methodology was, and it's really just math. It's like how many people cross an intersection versus how wide is the sidewalk with obstacles. BFJ observed that methodology was designed for large urban areas with sufficient counting, where the idea is individuals are trying to, it's rush hour, individuals are trying to get from point A to point B. How many individuals can be accommodated in that way without creating a traffic jam? That is not the condition we see, in Cold Spring. It's a weekend, it's sightseers, it's groups looking at windows and that kind of thing. And so the grading, BFJ concluded, was not really appropriate as a way of summarizing conditions in Cold Spring. ORCA actually agreed with that, and so they agreed, although we haven't seen it yet, and it's been several months, to take the LOS grading out and instead use pictures to describe the conditions, and also describe the conditions which we all kind of know are true as being crowded, during peak times.
They indicated what grade they would have given it?
Yeah. So they took snapshots during. Okay, so AKRF, the flow snapshots, it took data in May, July, and September. Did not take any data in October. And its data was only from 9 a.m. till 1 p.m. And that's significant because what ORCA found when they were here in person is peak traffic is actually 2 to 3. Okay, so AKRF undercounted both in terms of time of day and in terms of when they were here. But what they did do is they had cameras on 7 intersections in Cold Spring, and they had it hourly. It's like a lot of camera data, and somebody had to count the stuff. So they did grade, and that was this loss grading. That was based on primarily the AKRF data. And as I said, most of the Cold Spring sidewalks that they graded were B or A, and there were some Cs, where C is like moderately impacted, D and D, there's no E. D and F, I think, are a gridlock. So it really did, I think, reflect a methodological choice and also a set of counts that underrepresented the crowding conditions during peak in Cold Spring. And
D or an F, though, as opposed to a C.
they did not give it a D or an F because an F is literally people are standing and cannot move forward. Yeah, right.
Sounds like a solid D plus.
Again, it probably isn't the right metric.
Can I get a letter?
This is
Yeah.
the sort of methodology concern expressed that ORCA needs to come back and respond to, correct? That's the...
Yeah, on this one, they agreed that the methodology was inappropriate and that when they publish the final reports, they will not grade them using that metric.
Thank you.
Okay, so I've already sort of prefaced, the other thing was, and this was more of an observation of the members of the VDC rather than the consultant, because the consultant is not a local. and hasn't spent, significant time in the community. That, AKRF had missed the afternoon. Orca was here counting and did attempt counts in September and October. But the only good weather day they got that was a weekend was a single day, October 8th. And that was basically their peak, a little bit higher in some cases and lower in other cases than May. They did come October 28th, but only very limited staff. Basically, I think one count was conducted at 11 a.m. in Cold Spring. They got more counts at the trailheads. What that one count in Cold Spring showed was October 28th was astronomically higher in that 1 hour than the next closest count. Now, October 28th was a special day. It was the Halloween parade day, and so there was like extra.
And Haldane Homecoming.
And Haldane Homecoming. Thanks.
That was a crowd.
Right. So it was depending on how you think about it, it was not a representative day, but it was also not a crazily unusual day.
And a beautiful day.
It was in a pretty day. So, but what you saw for like the one data point, which was at 11 a.m. in Cold Spring, was the number was almost a factor of 2 higher than the next highest 11 a.m. number they had seen. And so that is like suggestive of a concern that they missed peak, and that while annual averages might be reasonable, there is a question about whether they really captured peak. The other thing I'll note is the little, and this isn't so much in the written report, like the Breakneck Ridge data is sort of odd. The Breakneck Ridge data is based on the trail stewards, but what they show, the counts they do at the trailhead at Breakneck Ridge, what they show is basically a declining visitation level, kind of secular decline over 6 years. It went up the first couple of years, and then I think starting in 2020, it went down. Which, a count is a count, but every other park that was measured as a comparable has been going up during the period. It's sort of raising the question, is there something, specific to Breakneck that was going on there? One possibility, which wouldn't necessarily be a problem for the projections, was that it was a substitution, that Washburn got built, right, the parking lot got built, steps, and there was a substitution. Another possibility is Breakneck was advertised as being closed in 2023, May through June. And actually, and we don't know why yet, the trail stewards do have counts for that period of time in their data, and we think Orca used the trail steward counts. So it just raises a question about, how aware were they of conditions, locally, and were they, considering whether there was noise in the data. And so we've asked them to talk to the trail stewards to kind of validate what was going on there. Okay, so that was the baseline. What the visitation projections did, I'll just frame, right? So, so HHFT and Orca have acknowledged that visitation levels are going up and that the Fjord Trail will increase visitation generally to the area. And in essence, what they've been assessing is the extent to which spreading out visitation, including by, because the Fjord Trail itself might encourage people to take different paths, and what Orca is calling indirect mitigation members, how much that will impact this growth versus the actual projected growth itself, right? It's sort of a balancing act. And their message has been that that through indirect sort of management, they can influence behavior enough so that they can mitigate the volume increase to prevent critical overcrowding against the projected growth. And so obviously one input to that equation is how much growth, okay? And for purposes of recent demonstrations, and this was like videos that they showed at Duchess Manor on the 3rd, they're using an 18% total growth amount over 10 years as their baseline growth, and then they're adding some number of Fjord Trail additions to that. That number, based on our review of analysis so far, seems at best extremely optimistic and certainly not representative of the possible range of growth. And that goes into the kind of the nitty-gritty of the numbers in the projection. So I'll give you a list of our concerns. Before I do that, I just want to make one process point. What they gave us to review was not the study. It was a 14-page summary of the study, the same one the public can get on the website. And what that summary does is it describes in words a methodology that they use to come up with their results, and then numerically it provides the results. And there's some interim numbers there too. It's not just the final results. What it does not do is it does not show you calculations. It does not show you underlying data. So we have not had the data necessary to do a fulsome review of the validity of that report. We have asked for that data. We're now several months into asking for that data. We haven't gotten it yet. So what we did was three things. We basically scrutinized the methodology for reasonableness. We assessed the numbers they gave us against publicly available numbers from New York State parks to make sure that they matched or to find situations where they didn't match. And we used the growth rates they said they were using and compared them against the totals they gave us to validate, back test the calculations, basically. That's all we've done so far, okay? So our concerns are based on what we were able to do.
That's where the banker came in.
The numerate ones of us particularly, yeah. Okay, so what we're reporting are basically those analyses we did. And what we saw was a number of discrepancies and questionable choices that we have been probing, where in virtually all cases where we made that inquiry, what we saw was the number that ORCA was using was lower than the number. It depressed the numbers. They were all biases down. In addition, and that was mostly for like projected growth just without the build. In addition, they gave us a build number which was 165,000 to 250,000 annual. That's what they're projecting the contribution of the build will be, which is a pretty sizable number, but we didn't get really any methodology sufficient to test that number. It's a material number, but again, we don't know why it's not 400,000 or 50,000, frankly. I mean, there was a little bit of a methodology there. What they did do is they posted signs you could scan with your iPhone, and you could take an online survey. And they asked folks who were visiting the area, if we built this fjord trail, would you come more? And so one thing that they added to the contribution of new build is how many people said they would come more often, and so what does that translate to in terms of increase? What they didn't really show us any methodology for at all was totally new visits. And so we've asked for a better explanation of how they came up with those numbers.
Can I just clarify that, Jeff? So
Yeah.
that number, for example, that 165, range, or 248,000, and then you're going to go on and give other numbers.
Yeah.
Those are estimated total new visits? Those
Total
are
new
projections of new
visits.
visits, not current baseline, all those numbers.
Right. So the methodology they used is they created the 2023 baseline. And to create the 2023 baseline, they had to fill in gaps. They used the data they had. The data they had was trail steward visits to Breakneck Ridge and the counts that ORCA did themselves by hand on, I think, 8 to 14 days.
Yep.
And what they did was they looked at, on a given day where they were counting, how many did they have to Breakneck versus what were they seeing at Washburn, and what was the ratio? Mm-hmm. And then they used that to fill out all the other days for like Washburn, where they had Breakneck counts. They could do the same. They could project a count for Washburn. Then they went to other parks where they had data about on-season versus off-season, because the trail stewards only count for like May to October. So it was a whole off-season that was totally uncounted. They used data from other parks where they had off-season data, and they looked at kind of trends. And they projected those trends on Cold Spring in the area, and also for the same thing basically for weekday versus, so a pretty complicated, frankly, calculation. It was a reasonable thing to do. We haven't seen the math.
Yeah. Okay.
But so that's how they came up with a 2023 baseline.
Okay.
Then they projected forward just natural growth or decrease. And the way they did that was they found five parks or sets of parks where they had numbers, which they assessed as being reasonably comparable. And those were sort of national parks that are on the East Coast. That was one. 2 was Hudson Highlands State Park. 3 was Walkway Across the Hudson. And then 2 in Pennsylvania, Susquehanna Riverwalk and Buffalo Valley Rail Trail. And they took those comparable parks and they looked at data for 6 years back. What were the growth trends? And then they took the average of that and they said the average is 4.7, but we're going to take out the high, Hudson Highlands, and the low, Buffalo Valley, and then we get 4.2. And then they said, okay, so that is what we're going to use initially as our projected growth for our area, 4.2%. Okay. And then they said, okay, so we want to have a range, and so that range should be high, medium, and low, because it makes sense, right? You want to project a range of possible outcomes. And then they took a projection for the build and what it was going to add, and they added the build number that they projected to their low growth scenario, their middle growth scenario, and their high growth scenario. And that basically is their range of projections. Does that make sense? Okay. So what were the questions? First, the comparability of the 5 parks was something we questioned. Okay. In particular, Buffalo, and I think, look, data is limited. One of the reasons they picked those 5 sets, I think, is because they had data, which is you only have the data you have. But Buffalo Valley Rail Trail in particular seems to be, of limited comparability. It's in kind of eastern, middle Pennsylvania. It's in a rural part of Pennsylvania. It does not have big metropolitan, cities nearby, and it certainly does not have, commuter trains from New York City. Also, Hudson Highlands State Park is here and was the high number. And there was no weighting towards that number, which struck us as a questionable methodological question. Okay, so that was one. We questioned the comparability of the comparables. 2, there were 2 comparables in New York State, here and the Walkway Across the Hudson, where New York State Parks publishes the data. They've got, I think, 20 years of visitation data. And we're pretty sure, based on the limited data we saw from Orca, it was actually the data they were using. When we did the math, Orca was showing a 7.6% growth rate for our park. When we did the math, we came up with 10.63 and 7.3, and BFJ validated that.
And that's based on New York State Parks numbers.
New York State Parks numbers published on their website. Similarly, for Walkway, Orca said the 6-year average was 1%. We calculated above 2%, 2.1, I think. So when you correct for those numbers, if you take the numbers that we took from Park, their 4.2 average becomes 5.61. And this is an annual growth rate, so over 10 years, it has a pretty material effect. Third, Orca took the average that they observed for the other comparable parks, that 4.2, and they used that as their high estimate for our region, essentially saying the average they were seeing in other parks, which again was lower than the growth they're seeing in our park, is the peak number that they're going to use as sort of their cap projection. Now, they did have a justification for that, but it's one that I think we're going to have to argue about. Their justification was that when they took their survey, they asked visitors to our parks, where are you coming from? And then they looked at where those counties were, and they looked at the growth rates, the population growth rates in those counties, and they saw that those counties, particularly like Manhattan, have been actually shrinking over the last few years. And they said, population is shrinking in the location, therefore, this rate can't keep, effectively, this rate seems too high. They did not backtest that kind of correlation against the other parks or against the 6-year averages that we know of. So instead of taking what you would call an unbalanced view, an unbiased view of the comparables and saying, hey, the growth rate here could be higher or lower than the 6-year average we've been seeing, they used it as the high. And then I'll say lastly, when we looked at their high projection, where they said they were using the 4.2% rate, and we did the math, and we just said, here are your results, you gave them to us, what's the growth rate that these results tell us you actually used? It was 3.7%. And that one is a head scratcher. We have not had an explanation of why that, may have been. And we had, again, that validated by AVFJ. Okay, so a lot of things biased the numbers down. If you look at, in sum, Orca's high scenario, they show annual visitation growing from 440,000 a year, basically, to 623. If you use the 5.6 number that we calculate based on the two comparables we corrected, we don't know about the other three because we haven't seen that data. Instead of getting a 44% 10-year growth, you get a 71% 10-year growth. And if you were to consider that to be the medium instead of the high, you'd have to, estimate some sort of a normal curve, a range of highs. And you would estimate probably another like 10 or 15% on top of that. That could take you up to an almost 100% growth, which is a very high number, 900,000. So look, this is not Orca's numbers, right? We have not discussed this with Orca, but to set the range of disagreement, that's kind of the size of the numbers we're looking at. So regarding projections of the additional impact, Orca again estimates between 165 and 250. I've sort of discussed how they did that, and we just need to see methodology for that. So adding all of that together, if you took what we're considering, if you took a high version of the numbers as corrected by us, you could get a very high visitation number, 1,100,000 a year. I'm not saying that that's a good number. I'm just saying, in terms of talking about a range, that's kind of where you get using their methodology. So it's a very material difference. So, and then again, maybe the HHFT build itself, turns out to be, their estimation turns out to be about right. Certainly they are educated guessers, but we just haven't seen any indication that they've studied, say, the impact of new builds elsewhere to come up with a specific projection of that number. So in summary, it appears the amount of visitation that HHFT, the municipalities and FDD itself would need to ameliorate through their spreading and indirect management strategies might be much, much higher than what HHFT is currently consulting, and certainly higher than the 18% that they've been so far using for their video simulations. So that's it on that report. We did also, I don't know if you want to have this time spent this way, we did also, as part of the background preparation for the studies we reviewed, have a presentation of their alternative routes analysis. That has been public for quite some time, and it was published before we took a look at it. I mention it just because I think it's a useful document for the public to look at, because what it does, at least for a snapshot in time, is it encapsulates how the sponsors thought about potential alternative routes and how they graded those alternative routes. And what you see there is, frankly, that they limited the alternatives they were really going to consider through creating through articulating for themselves and for the report mandatory criteria for the trail that included it needed to be pedestrian and bicycle, two-way in each direction, contiguous, and ADA compliant, and have certain kind of not more than like a 5% grade for a limited period of time. And then they graded it based on 10 criteria that they set, which if you scrutinize the criteria, what you'll see is about 6 of them, if you have, this is all subjective, but about 6 of them are really focused on the user experience, sort of proximity to amenities, the views, ease of travel, sort of how easy it is to get there, that kind of thing. One of them is focused on safety. One of them is focuses on environment. And so, when you put those things together, it was sort of a foregone conclusion that a waterside trail, particularly in the southern part of the park, would be the preferred choice. Because, for example, you can't have a 14-foot wide contiguous path on Fair Street. You can't have, pedestrians on sidewalks on either side of the street and bikes using the street, but you can't have that kind of a path. So, again, it wasn't something that we had input on, but it does have some takeaways. One is that some routes were obviously discounted entirely because of the basic criteria they used. Another is that local discussion of the AFT is commented on possible routes that might be good at addressing local problems, getting from here to there, safety, limited impact, but simply weren't studied by HHT for the consultants, at least as part of that study, because they would have required compromising on their basic criteria. So these options were effectively taken off the table, making discussion sort of difficult. A third, and I think this is real, is the getting around Breakneck Ridge is logistically difficult. And effectively what that study says is either you have a waterside path, or given our criteria, you have to build this really, really long gradual bridge starting south of the chalet, gradually going up above the tunnel, going up over the tunnel, and then down, which would be, something that would be, I'm sure, a very large structure. And I am not a builder, I am not an engineer, I'm not an architect, but that struck us, or me, as being a very limited consideration of the alternatives for that space. But it's a difficult space, and so you would have to do something in the nature of, tunnels or stairs or ramps, something. And so that's a real kind of logistical, concern for the trail.
Sorry, I have a quick question. Sure. The railroad, is there any data that reflects anything regarding that, like the railroad, the number of people, the MTA, is anybody involved in communicating with them? I mean, you're talking about this large structure coming up, like you said, over the tunnel and whatnot.
I think the municipalities can probably answer that better than I can, but what I will say is Orca did count, as part of their counts, number of people coming off the trains in Cold Spring, as well as at Breakneck Ridge. And that was part of their assessment of the crowding conditions there.
Safety data gathered regarding the
Not that I'm aware
railroad
of.
and this promenade?
Not that I'm aware of.
No?
They also counted C Street, by the way. But so obviously the railroad is a hugely important part of the logistical discussion, right? Both in terms of permits and in terms of how you work your way around it. But that's not really kind of our
Okay.
remit.
Is there any other questions from the board? Jeffrey, do you guys have any?
I do have a question. Have you looked at, as a committee, what the projections might be in the future, or even discussed it, if there weren't going to be any alterations to the tourist management issue that we have, the challenges that we have, what the impact, there are projections that still visitation with or without a trail is going to increase to our town and our villages. So have you discussed that as a committee? Are there any numbers that you've projected, or that Orca has projected when you review their data, of what it would look like without a trail?
So Orca. So a couple of responses. One, our participation, both members of the committee and BFJ, has really been to react to and kind of audit Orca's data to the extent they've given us the data. Again, we are using a consultant that the HHFT hired for us, and we don't actually know what the budget is, but it's not endless. And so, BFJ is great, but BFJ is not separately producing projections for the area.
They're not actually doing field calculations.
They're not doing field calculations. They're not. Right. We did ask Orca and AKRF to give us camera data for their count, so we have the data. It's like reams for the hours they were there. You can imagine it's like huge amounts of data, and so actually taking apart that data would be, an interesting thing to do, but not something that we have the resources, I think, to do.
That camera data was just pedestrians, right? It's not cars or anything, or was it?
We
You don't have a traffic study.
we do not have a traffic study. There are cars, and I think that will be part of the AKRF traffic study, but we don't have the study.
But there's no question that the numbers are going to increase. There's no question about that. It's just about how much.
With or without?
Yeah,
without.
I mean, actually, so for what it's worth, the low projection that Orca came up with is actually a decreased number, based on this notion that, you know, visitation from the counties where people come from are actually losing population. And so I think their low projection was actually a decrease of 1.5% a year, something like that. But was, you know, certainly the 6-year average for all the parks we've seen, they all go steadily up. The averages for New York parks go up. The average for our park has been going up at a 10.5% rate per year over 6 years, and I think it's like 10% a year over 20 years. So, yes. But
And
we,
as you know, if you do hike, there is no on or off season anymore. The season just goes right through the winter. We see
Right.
the steady streams.
So John, I'll add a comment. I know we're over, so I'm going to combine it all into one comment. And there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. And I mean, I'm going to reiterate what everybody else said. Jeff, Phil, other members of the VDC, thank you for all the work you did, because we can see you dug in, you know, and did a lot of detailed thinking about probably the most important part of this project, which is visitor data projections and how they're going to impact the community. So really, thank you very much. And I guess I would say, you know, I guess saving comments for a future workshop, like we've all discussed. And I think the fact that you've raised these sorts of detailed questions, and they're supposed to be fed back into the process and have responses from ORCA and AKRF, is incredibly important. I think it's incredibly important that the DGEIS public comment period got moved back to early fall. So hopefully, because... John, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Strike that. Everybody strike that from memory right there. But I guess what I'd say is, you know, we have, you know, we had that May 8th meeting. You know, personally, I support the concept of the Fjord Trail, right? I support it for a number of reasons. I support it for connectivity, you know, Philipstown Trails Committee member. But that being said, you know, we all have concerns, even people who support it, about the impact and how it's going to affect the community. And when you present, and not that we have the numbers, these are all your calculations, but a range of visitor projections that go from 165 to nearly 1 million, it seems really difficult to plan in that scenario and make good decisions about what the Fjord Trail is or how it should be managed. So I guess my only expression here is that you've raised all these concerns. I hope it narrows that range down considerably in a way that people can agree on, so there can be some kind of ability to make decisions. And the last comment I'll make is, you mentioned it, and you said currently the plan is to manage visitor projections through indirect visitation management versus you raised the idea of rationing access, like certain parks do. And so I guess that stood out to me in your comments. And if that range can't be narrowed, then it seems like there has to be discussion about a trigger that includes rationing access if it gets too much, if that range is too large. So anyway, I thank you, and I look forward to the further discussions and what the Fjord Trail consultants come back with, so we can kind of go further in the process and have, you know, all of the information on the table at the same time. So thank you.
Anybody else?
No, I just want to say thanks for all your effort on that, Phil and Jeff. Greatly appreciate it. And, you know, I think majority, I support the trail, but there's certain things that are, you know, there's pros and cons and everything else. So I think we're in early stages here. I mean, I've been saying this for a while, that, you know, get the trail. What I like to see is the stages and how many years it's going to take to get from point A to point B, which I have no idea what that is. But I like to see get from Breakneck down to Little Stony Point and then stop there and then let's see what happens from there on in, because that's going to be some real true data that we're going to be able to have.
We're going to wrap up the Fjord presentation for this evening. I did attend the steering committee meeting on, was it Monday, Tuesday, I believe. So I got this lovely water bottle from Fjord Trail, and thank you for that. Yeah. No sweaters yet, but just a bottle. The idea that we would like to proceed with is once the DGIS is released, this obviously, there's a lot of data here, and I can't thank you guys enough for what you've done, all of you. Chris included, and the rest of the data committee, the amount of effort that they put into this work and providing us with numbers that we couldn't possibly have dug into at that depth with the jobs that we have currently. So, again, thank you. But I think it's better if anybody wants a copy of this, you can email the town clerk. There's a
sign-up sheet right
There's a
here, so
sheet.
if anybody wants a copy of it, just sign the email, and I'll send
And we
it
can
out
provide
either
you,
later
we didn't
tonight
want
or
to print
tomorrow.
50 copies of this, but we can provide you with a copy of it.
You can put it on the webpage too, right? Yeah.
And we can go on the webpage with it. So we will reconvene with a full Fjord workshop, probably the report's coming out at the end of the summer, early fall, but we'll reconvene with a Fjord discussion post the release of the DGIS. This will give, as Jason said, ORCA and AKRF an opportunity to respond to our data committee's report and numbers. It will allow the general public to digest the report that we have now in our hands. And it'll give us an opportunity to respond to the DGIS as a community. So thank you all. We are going to proceed with the rest of our meeting. So if you're going to stay. If you're going to leave, I'd ask you to please go outside quietly so we can proceed with our meeting. So after that, we have something which I like to do. We have some fun stuff to do this evening instead of all the hard work that we're normally doing. So I'm going to go right into the proclamations for our 2 Eagle Scouts. So Simon, if you could come up first, and I'd like to present you. Step up to the mic. So, as I said, this is a fun event that we get to do for the town, to present a proclamation to one of our local, our little buddy here. Whereas the mission of the Boy Scouts of America is to prepare young people to make ethical and moral choices over their lifetimes by instilling the values of the Scout Oath and Law, and where Scouts achieve their ranking by fulfilling requirements in areas of leadership, service, outdoor skills, and whereas Simon Pieza, good job, of Philipstown, Troop 437, has proven to be an outstanding member of the Boy Scouts of America, attaining the highest honor bestowed on a Scout, the ranking of Eagle Scout, And whereas, could be either, right? Simon earned this rank of Eagle Scout through his many contributions, most notable his leading of a group of Scouts to build and install 2 small picnic tables with chessboards on each side of Cold Springs waterfront, inspired by memories of his childhood in New York City. And whereas he also learned how to lead and plan a scouting year full of fun events as the troop's senior patrol leader, experienced in living on a sailboat with fellow scouts for a week while at sea base in the U.S. Virgin Islands while circumnavigating St. John's Island. And whereas Simon has also learned to adapt and endure hardship while at the World Scouting Jamboree in Korea when circumstances caused the U.S. contingent to pull out and regroup at Camp Humphreys military base. I'd like to hear that story someday. Now, therefore, the town board of Philipstown, on behalf of all its residents, joins with Troop 437 in recognizing this bright and outstanding young man for his many accomplishments and specifically his receiving the prestigious rank of Eagle Scout as Boy Scouts of America. Congratulations. Next up, 2 in one night. These guys are amazing. Daniel. So we're going to go through this again. Whereas the mission of the Boy Scouts of America is to prepare young people to make ethical and moral choices over their lifetimes by instilling the values of the Scout Oath and Law, and where scouts achieved their ranking by fulfilling requirements in area of leadership, service, and outdoor skills. And whereas Daniel Campanile of Philipstown, Troop 437, has proven to be an outstanding member of the Boy Scouts of America, also attaining the highest honor bestowed on a scout, the ranking of Eagle Scout. And whereas Daniel earned his rank of Eagle Scout through his many contributions, most notable his project to replace the flagpole and restore the Veterans Memorial in Nelsonville. As whereas through that project he removed the broken flagpole and replaced it with a new one, along with a new American flag and POW MIA flag, removed shrubs and prune trees, planted new native shrubs, weeded and mulched flower beds, and renovated the kiosk. And whereas through the Merit Badge program, Daniel has also learned to try new things, develop confidence in the outdoors, practice leadership tactics, and develop leadership skills. Now therefore, the Town Board of Philipstown, on behalf of all its residents, joins with Troop 437 in recognizing this bright and outstanding young man for his many accomplishments, and specifically his receiving the prestigious rank of Eagle Scout as a Boy Scout of America. Great job. Thank you, fellas.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, guys.
Congrats.
I hope you didn't have a bad time there at St. John's in that snowball.
You guys are certainly welcome to leave. It doesn't get any more exciting from here on out, I can tell you.
Well, if Nat comes up, it does.
All righty. Okay, I guess we'll get into the agenda now.
Well, you got approval of the minutes first.
Okay. Approval of minutes. Workshop meeting from February 8th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Regular meeting, May 2nd, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Workshop meeting of May 8th, 2024.
So moved.
Second. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you. Committee reports. Conservation Board.
Conservation Board met on May 14th. There was a planning board referral for a subdivision of 50 acres at 60 Lake Surprise, being subdivided to form a 6-acre lot. Conservation Board's conducting a site visit. 498 Sprout Brook Road. The applicant is seeking a permit to construct a driveway and single-family home. The applicant had a stop work order. They have reduced their septic plan to meet the Conservation Board's requirements, and they'll perform a soil test at the Conservation Board's request. 53 Philipsbrook Road, the applicant was issued a permit and would like to change the rain garden that was permitted to a rain gutter and barrel collection system. Max at the Conservation Board will conduct a site visit. The Garrison Golf Club, PDD, Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival was seeking a permit for excavation and reconstruction of existing Route 9 entry and some work around a pond there. Those proposed changes to the Route 9 entry are being made at the request of New York State DOT. Conservation Board has visited the site multiple times, and they've reviewed the planting and mitigation plans, and they plan to vote on the permit at the upcoming June meeting. Hudson Highlands Reserve, Route 9 and Horton Road. The applicant is seeking a permit to modify their drainage canal along the edge of Route 9 to accommodate their storm drainage system. The Conservation Board is going to visit with Town Engineer Ron Gaynor. The next Conservation Board meeting is this upcoming Tuesday, June 11th at 7:30.
Thank you, Jason. Recreation.
Good evening. The Recreation Commission met on May 28th. I was not there. I was on a trail in Alaska. But they did report that the spring programs have concluded for the year, and the early summer programs are underway for the month of June, ahead of summer camp, which starts July 1st. The rec programs have also had several senior activities, including a spring luncheon that had 90 guests in attendance, and they're planning a tour and lunch of Brotherhood Winery this month. There's also a tour and lunch at the Culinary Institute of America in July. All of the children's programs are concluding at the end of June, and as they conclude, summer camp will be implemented beginning, as I said, July 1st. And the summer camp is at full capacity each week, which is no surprise, but the wait list that they had did open up due to the expansion of two groups, the 5th and 6th grade groups and the teen groups, due to the demand. So we're grateful for the Recreation Department for expanding those groups. The parks in Philipstown are being treated by Griffin Organics, and Frank and Walter, who are on the staff of the Philipstown Recreation, are in the process of repairing the dog park fence. I know Legislator Montgomery will be glad to hear that. All right. And Mark's Landscaping is completing the replacement of 2 concrete slabs outside the building's back doors at the rec center that were ruined during the water main break that occurred in December. The next Recreation Commission meeting is Thursday, June 25th at 7:30 p.m.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you to the commission and our staff at the Recreation. They have a busy time coming up.
They've been very busy, and they have a very much busier time. You're right, Joe.
Philipstown Hub.
Thank you to to Cecily Hall, by the way, at the Recreation Department for her report. And Chris Owen also submitted a report for the Philipstown Hub, reporting that the hub has seen an increase of 31.3% in the number of touch points over May of last year, which is really so significant. They've reached 3,430 people since the start of the fiscal year on July 1st, 2023. An average of 13 people per workday for the year, 14 during May. So it's even increasing, as we said, in May, it increased significantly. Emails also dominate with 236 emails in the month of May, 158 calls, and 60 texts. Overall, there's been an increase of 105% over the month of April. Texts increased by 40% and emails by 14%. They are dealing with some local issues, and families are reaching out locally. There have been recommendations from staff at a local school. There was a language challenge, but the hub care coordinator worked with the parent in the parent's native language. So they were grateful for that and the assistance provided to that family. Another resident contacted the hub after visiting an event in Cold Spring, the Modern Makers Market event, which the hub had a table at, and that individual didn't know about the hub and was delighted to know that there is a resource locally to get services. Another family was recommended by another family that is a client of the hub, and they've been able to address options for that family's child and connect them with services right away. So they thank the hub for their assistance and are grateful that their child is getting services now. They've shared comments with the board, and the next meeting of the hub board will take place on Wednesday, June 12th, which is later this month. Thank you to the Philipstown Hub again, and to all of the board members and Chris Owen, the director.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Judy. Much appreciated. Planning Board.
Okay, Planning Board, I attended the Planning Board meeting May 16th. We had a referral from the town of Fishkill. Homeland Towers Communications is going to be erecting a 154-foot monopole tower on 73 Route 9, which is the area where Lysicaitis has their plant up there with their yard. So they just wanted to give us an update regarding that. Okay, we had a public hearing in Kinsella Plaza, 3626 Route 9, Cold Spring. They've been in front of the planning board for several months now, probably about 8 or 9. The public hearing, couple little background on this. They're going to be building several buildings on that site. One 9,500 square foot building in the front, and then a 5,300 square foot building in the back for storage and different rentals for different types of construction people or masonry people or other types of industries that might be back there. But anyway, we had a public hearing. We had 5 citizens spoke. The concerns were truck traffic. As you know, there's been A lot of development on Route 9 in the last several years, and everyone's concerned about the truck traffic. There's going to be additional truck traffic with this. They're going to have a run an oil company business out of this. They are not going to be storing any oil at this facility. As you know, many months ago, we put a moratorium for oil storage along that corridor. Right now, the 6 months is, I think, was over, right? We're going to extend, did we extend that last month? We did, right. So now we just got to work on getting that. Anyway, so the current concerns about the amount of trees that were going to be taken down, the amount of land clearing that was going to be, the size of the building, the space of the coverage. Anyway, the planning board closed the public hearing, but they requested a traffic study. Did not have a traffic study at this particular time. Another public hearing was McCall Calvel at 429 Sprout Brook Road. There was no public comment whatsoever. The public hearing was closed. Old business, Garrison Golf Course, PDD, Hudson Valley Shakespeare. They've been in front of the planning board now for a little bit over 2 years. The applicant latest site plan submissions with consultant comments were, they were very pleased with the soil management plan, looked good. They liked the landscaping plan, but many members of the planning board want to see pictures of the types of trees they're going to be planting there. They showed pictures, but now they want to see actual better pictures. I mean, they showed drawings of the trees. They want to actually see pictures of the trees that are going to be planting there. They also indicated that the traffic light that's going to most likely be at Snake Hill Road and Route 9D, that's going to mean green majority of the time. They're considering this a censored, fully active, it's called. So that's what they're calling it. It's going to most likely be green most of the time. Waiting on feedback from the Conservation Board, which Jason already reported back on. Other business, Lake Surprise, Lake Surprise Road. The applicant is seeking approval for 2-lot subdivision. There'll be a public hearing in the next planning board meeting, which is going to be the 26th of this month. Amenda Vista, 9 Cliffside Court Garrison. This is considered a minor project, a construction of a single-family home, driveway, septic system, and well. There's a couple of issues related to this. There's steep slopes involved, over 30%. The lot coverage is like 20%, which is only supposed to be about 10%. The planning board declared a type 2 seeker action is referred to the zoning board in the county planning, county health. There is also a violation on this location already for the building from a driveway permit. A site visit is scheduled for this Sunday at 9:30, and these site visits are open to the public if anyone wants to attend. New business. Allison Dusman Fish Library is looking to consider this a major project, construction open-sided roof pavilion. This is the first time they've been through the planning board. The planning board listed as a site type 2 seeker action, referred to the other planning board, to the inspections to the Conservation Board, Garrison Fire Company, County Planning, and also, too, we have a site visit for this Sunday at 10:30. Planning Board was adjourned at 9:45. Next meeting is June 20th.
Zoning.
I actually missed the May meeting. I had a prior commitment, so the next meeting for the zoning is on June 10th, so.
Okay. Highway.
Okay, wait a second. Where's my highway report?
I have one right here. Here you go.
Okay, there we go, highway. Highway, submitted by Adam Hoteling, Superintendent of Highways. Work performed for the Philipstown Highway Department in the month of May. Crews are out working on the town roads, which is very narrow. Remind all motorists to slow down when you see some work being done on the side of the road, to be cautious and safety for our crews. Crews have been out grading using a mix of item 4 and screening mix of select roads. Like I said, we're using the different materials. You know, we're getting a lot of public feedback about the different materials we're trying to use. So we're trying some other new materials as well on these dirt roads to see how this one works. So I just want to let people know that we're not doing the same thing every single time. It's just we're trying different things. Along with that, continued spring maintenance on the town roads. The highway department has been out sweeping roads, mowing, and weed whacking intersections. Summer approaches. We would like to remind all homeowners they are responsible for trimming hedges and bushes growing and hanging over town roads. Please do your part in trimming along your property lines and obstruct drivers to view approaching the town roads. For the month of May, the highway department received approximately 40 phone calls or emails and spent roughly $15,000 on maintenance on the truck. End of report.
Building and Land, I have nothing. Cemetery Committee?
Sorry, Cemetery Committee, the landscaping is being done. I spoke with Taggart, I emailed him, I haven't heard back. And I want to say thank you to Girl Scout Troop 1091 as they continue each year to put down the flags for Memorial Day. And hopefully we can get some repairs done on this, on the Mountain Avenue cemetery. There was a few headstones that,
While we're on the topic, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm
thank-
sorry.
While we're on the topic of cemetery, I did receive a number of complaints about the condition of the Cold Spring Cemetery for Memorial Day and just the general condition of the roads and the grass. So I have reached out to, the town of Philipstown does not own that, nor does the village of Cold Spring. It's a private, non-for-profit that handles the funds and runs the maintenance. So there has been some change, and they are going through some struggles with manpower and maintenance and getting things accomplished. But I have reached out to the director, the man who's currently the director, and I'm hoping to meet with him in the next few weeks and just see where the cemetery is going as far as the maintenance. If you ride through, you'll notice the roads are in bad shape, the grass. It's gotten to the point where people are going and cutting the grass around their own family stones, which I don't think is the best idea, just considering the liability that's involved to the cemetery if somebody were, and I didn't know this was going on, but there is a lot of families that are doing this now, just going in and cutting them, which shouldn't be a part. So I think there is some new blood on the committee, so I'm hoping that there will be progress. But I did notice the other night that it is cut, so I'm hoping just maybe the call stimulated some action. But I will follow up, and please know that we're looking into it, so.
Yeah, it's the Cold Spring Cemetery Association that runs that. And there's 4 or 5 board members that run it as well. And one board member recently left.
That's it for that. County Ledge, you're up. Good.
So the supervisor's aware that the Putnam
Gotta
County,
talk into that.
want me to talk louder? Me, louder? The Putnam County Legislature approved the Town of Philipstown sales tax funding reallocation for the Garrison Water District. And you're in direct contact with the county executive, and we'll find out when that check will be in the mail.
I'm gonna go pick it up.
I'd be happy to help you if you'd like, but I know
In
that.
all seriousness, I have to thank Jason for his work on that, he and Eliza Starbuck from the village. But we literally that is going to pay for the connection from the Garrison Landing to our new well. So we appropriated the money for that purpose. We can't spend it until we get the IMA in place and get the check, and then we can, it can't be a prior expenditure. So
Government.
the shovel is, it's down there, ready to go in the ground, waiting for the check. So as soon as it's printed, I will be going to Carmel to pick it
Okay.
up. But thank you so much for getting that.
If I can assist in any way in your communication with the county executive, I'd be happy to. Just an update on the Sprout Brook Road Bridge project in Continental Village. They have a contractor, and they have sent for final DOT approval, and a community meeting will be scheduled when the DPW has pre-construction meeting with the contractor.
I'm sorry, I
So-
forgot to miss the beginning. Is that for that dam down there? Is that what was?
No, that's
Oh,
Sprout,
okay.
that's
Okay.
the bridge.
Oh, the bridge. Okay, I'm sorry. I
yeah.
missed-
Right at the bottom of
Yep,
Winston.
right where we met
Yep.
that person a few weeks ago. Yep,
But I did
gotcha.
request an update on the Sylvan Pond Dam issue because that's of great concern to all of us and to the village, Continental Village folks. They're having their community meeting on June 12th. So I requested an update from Soil and Water Manager Neil Toman. Hopefully, I'll get that before the June 12th meeting. I don't know if I'll be able to attend the June 12th meeting in Continental Village. I've been going to them, but, those are great to attend if, I know you guys are meetinged out, but just, there's a lot of information that they request from us, and, I like to go and try to give them any information I can. It's a very active community HOA organization. June 9th, I'm sorry, which I think is this Sunday, is the first ever Putnam County Youth Business Market. It is at Tilly Foster Farm. The event is dedicated to empowering our youth with business acumen and an entrepreneurial spirit. So it's more than just a lemonade stand, and the participants will be selling their own products. So I encourage everybody to go.
Where is that?
Tilly Foster Farm,
Tilly.
Sunday. I know it's not. Someday we'll get it here. It's the first ever, and I'm sure it will be an annual thing. So I'm here for any questions. Anything you guys need from the county, feel free to give me a call. Okay?
Thank you, Nan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we're going into the agenda.
First is a resolution introducing a local law to repeal the residency requirement for the office of town comptroller, and this is a roll call vote.
So this is necessary for us. At the end of the year, when Ann Gallagher retired, we took Susan Kenny, who was our comptroller. She is now the secretary for the supervisor. Our accountant, which was Kevin McKeon, is our acting comptroller currently. So he is doing that on a consultation basis, so we needed to remove the residency requirement in order for him to continue there. So we did not replace a person, so we lost one individual, but we have split that salary into our consultant, Kevin McKeon, who is a CPA, and we have Sue in my office covering the phones, as well as doing a lot of the comptroller work as well. So can I get a motion to, whereas the Town Board of Town of Philipstown has a local law before it entitled, "A Local Law Amending the Town Code of Town of Philipstown by repealing the residency required from the Town Comptroller set forth in Chapter 30, Article 2, Section 36, and whereas in order to consider enacting the said local law, it is necessary to first introduce it and hold a public hearing upon it. Now therefore be it resolved, the movement of this resolution does hereby introduce the proposed local law, and that the public hearing on the proposed law will be set for July, do we have a date?
11th.
July 11th. Oh, right, because,
Yeah.
right.
We'll get back to that.
2024 at 7:30 PM, and that due notice of the same shall be given by publication and posting. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Councilman Flaherty.
Aye.
Councilwoman Cotter.
Aye.
Councilman Angel.
Aye.
Councilwoman Farrell.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you.
Next is a resolution accepting the resignation of Ralph Bassignani from the Continental Village Park District Joint Advisory Committee.
So Ralph, as you know, serves the town in Continental Village in a number of roles, and this was one that he really wasn't really excited about maintaining. So I spoke to him, he submitted a resignation. So could I get a motion to accept Ralph's resignation?
Well, first, I'd like to thank Ralph for all his years of doing this. He's, he does a lot down there, but thanks, Ralph, for all your dedicated years for service on this. So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I
Thank
vote
you,
aye.
Ralph.
Yes, Ralph. He's still acting as the water commissioner.
Water man.
Thank God.
Next is a resolution appointing April McIver to the Continental Village Park District Joint Advisory Committee.
So if you look at April's resume, it's quite impressive. So she's been recommended by the group. So can I get a motion to accept April McIver to the Continental Village Park District Joint Advisory Committee?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you, April, for stepping up.
Next is Karen Ertlto to offer a brief update on the food scrap program.
You're on.
I was just going to say, didn't we just go over this?
The report is in the board collection of documents, so I don't want to just read through it, but I do want to highlight some things that are going on. We're 2 years old. As of May 16th, this is the food scrap recycling program. We are up to 227 families who have registered and joined the effort to collect our food scrap waste and have them composted. At the moment, we are averaging about 1,000 pounds of food scraps a week which if we continue at that rate would be 24 tons of food scraps for the year. That, according to the EPA calculator, is 37,000 net pounds of carbon dioxide that we've recovered. That's the equivalent of 4.77 tons of waste not sent to a landfill, 1,582 gallons of gasoline that was not consumed in a year, and the average energy needs of 1.77 families for a year. So I think we're doing our own part to contribute to the reduction of our community greenhouse gases. The members of the Food Scrap Advisory Committee remains the same. It's Councilwoman Judy Farrell, Councilman Jason Angel, and 2 Climate Smart volunteers, task force volunteers, myself and Eric Brown. We've done a number of outreaches. I'm not going to go through those but I would like to highlight some of the things that have happened. The Garrison School Food Scrap Awareness Day was attended by both Judy Farrell and Jason Angel, as was the Eco Summit on May 17th in an effort to promote food scrap, the importance of recycling waste. The Haldane School decided not to do a Food Scrap Awareness Day, but a group of us met with the principal, the student council advisor, and the student council president. And our goal was to find a way for the town of Philipstown to support the school's efforts to become more self-sustaining and ecologically responsible. This month, they have been collecting their food scraps. They're 4 days in, and they told me they're doing great. During the summer, Eric Brown, a member of the Food Scrap Advisory Committee, is going to be working with them to try to create a pilot program whereby we would buy them time to develop their own program, because the budget has already been set, et cetera, and to find a way for them to use the Lane Gate drop-off center as a place for them to bring their food scraps. We would not be collecting it, we would not be transporting it, we would simply be giving them a place to put their food scraps. So as that develops, we'll let you know. We'll keep you posted. We also did an Earth Day event. We did a Manitou school event. We've been out and about. And then the newest thing that has happened is the town and the village have tried to find a way to work together, again, to support each other and support the people in the village by creating a second food scrap drop-off site. This drop-off site will take the place of the Tuesday drop-off at Lane Gate now, so it will be the same amount of time, but it'll be roughly 7 months. We started late. It's going to start June 11th, and it would go till December 31st. And additional costs and site management is being handled by the village through grants. So,
They approved that IMA last night.
Pardon me?
They approved the IMA.
I heard, yeah, thank you, yeah. So that also we will keep you posted, and because it is a pilot program, we're going to be juggling and shifting and doing what we need to do to make it work. We did a second second compost give back day on Earth Day, and people who are here, councilmen, can react to that, but we all agree that it's a well-received program. The participants in the food scrap program enjoy doing it. They say it gives them a sense of completion in terms of what they're doing. So we're suggesting that continues on an annual basis.
Yeah, Charlene, there's really no anything left up there.
Pardon me?
It's all gone, the majority.
It's gone,
It's
yeah,
gone.
yeah. We have some strategies for next year now that we know where to place it, so. We're still working on the residence flyer and trying to come up with a way in which we think it would be effective to let people know what recycling efforts we're making, and we're in discussion with Christine Caballero, I think it is, the way she pronounces it, I apologize, who is a creative designer, and she's working with us to help us design something which we will bring and get recommendations for. In summary, I want to just say that the food scrap recycling program has been well received by residents. We've proven to be an important addition to the town's efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and the advisory committee recommends that we continue the program and continue to expand and create new things.
Will this help us move up the chain for the Climate Smart to bronze or gold or whatever?
You just want that gold medal, Bob.
Gold is tough.
Well, thank you, Karen, so much.
Oh, thank you, guys.
And Eric Brown as well, and Ryan up at the recycling center, and Councilmember Flaherty here, who has also supported us throughout this initiative.
And Trustee
And
Bozzi.
Jason.
And Trustee Bozzi, who really
Trustee
worked on the
Bozzi.
Cold Spring location, shout out to her. But yeah, thank you all.
All righty, wonderful.
Next on the agenda is to schedule any workshops or meetings. Our regular monthly meeting for July falls on the July 4th holiday, so we should move that to July 11th.
Perfect. That
Especially
work for
since we
everybody, the
scheduled a
11th?
public hearing.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Steve? Okay.
And
Alrighty.
then we don't have any scheduled workshops at the moment unless anybody
I have one
has-
request. Steve, you were gonna send me an email about the ad hoc committee to adjust the zoning, but I didn't see it yet.
July 11th is fine.
But-
Yes, I'm gonna send that to you. The way that it, can I microphone?
Yeah, sorry.
The way that it works, John, is that you have two options that could be pursued. The first would be that you would kind of spearhead it. You would pick 2, 3, however many you want, people to be an ad hoc town supervisor committee, and they would report to you, or they could come in on your behalf and report to the board, and they would say, here's what we're proposing in terms of oil storage amendments to the zoning. If you want something more formal, then you could have the board by resolution create a formal town board ad hoc committee for amendment of the zoning code regarding oil storage, and then you would either hold interviews or what have you, and the board would approve the people who would go on that committee and make the recommendations. It's up to you as to which way you want to proceed, depending on who it is you choose. You'll probably wind up in pretty much the same place at the end of the day, but again,
It's not just the oil storage, because we want to look at the calculations for land in the conservation subdivision as well.
oh yes, the conservation subdivision as well, you had mentioned that.
Right, so there was two, and we,
Different thing, okay.
Well, you'd want it all in one committee for zoning
right,
amendments. Yeah, I
but
don't
we
think
had
you'd
formal proposals from two different planners. One was 80,000, the other one was similar. So I just don't think we need to spend that kind of money to get we have so many capable people in town that I'm sure it would assist us. But what does the board feel? Do you want to go with a board approval of the committee? We could do that. I mean, we're not in any rush. We have 6 months. Again, we re-up the
Well, on the
moratorium.
conservation, there's no rush at all. I mean,
Right.
there's no moratorium in place there, but the oil, you could extend it, oil storage, you could extend it for another 6 months, so there's no rush
Extend
there
it
really
for another
either.
6 months?
Right, well, we did.
Well, we could
You
get,
have an additional 6
An
months
additional
beyond
6
that. you
months.
can
But
switch.
we just did it last month, so if you guys are all right, we'll do a board-approved committee, if you
I
can.
think that's the easiest thing to do, I think we maybe get somebody like, maybe see someone from the conservation board who want to be
Planning,
on it,
zoning.
someone from the planning,
Yep.
and maybe get our conservation, wetlands, maybe Max involved as well, maybe there's a couple people that I thought of.
Land trust, potentially, they've said that they have some capacity or to look at the
I
conservation
have
stuff.
been in contact with the land trust. It kind of has, the interest seems to have dropped off, I'm not sure. But they were going to suggest a couple different agencies as well, but we haven't gotten those suggestions yet. But I'm sure a member of the land trust would also. So let's go that route, and if everybody could formulate some names that we could put together, and we'll do, we should probably do a workshop just to formulate the committee and then go from there.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. Look, you could either limit the number of people on the committee or just have it open to how many people you choose to appoint. I'd suggest it's probably better to leave it open at this point because you are kind of going down two roads, one being the oil and the other being the conservation development. And you may want to add from 5 to 7 to 9 or whatever it is so they can divide up the work more easily.
We can just put an ad on it right now.
So I'll prepare a resolution for you for the meeting on the 11th, and then you can start filling out.
Perfect.
People will be on.
All right, perfect. Good. Does anybody else have any workshops they were looking?
Not a workshop, but I know in budget season that we always talk about grants and grant management, but I really still believe that our town has perhaps missed some opportunities. There are lots of grants out there, and if we could have, I know we have someone that we pay occasionally to write grant proposals, but just someone to look at grant opportunities and to go after them for a lot of the work that, the Climate Smart Task Force, but also recreation, tourist management. I mean, I visited a lot of towns that have great tourist management, and they get thousands, millions of visitors like we do. But they manage it well. So I just think that's something a grant manager, part-time, I know it's hard to find money in the budget, but it would benefit us.
Yeah, we have, I can't think of his name right now. We have him on a retainer currently. I did ask him to review, so I'll step back. The ARPA money, which we were hoping to apply to refund the town for the Garrison Landing water expenditure, that money that we were hoping to recoup to apply to the trucked-in money, trucked-in water, is not applicable to trucked-in water. So we were kind of steered in the wrong direction from the beginning from our consultant that anything involving the Garrison Landing and providing water, drinking water, would be covered. Unfortunately, there's a clause in it's called the State Revolving Fund, which is produced by the EPA. There's a clause in there that says everything except trucked water, which is like on page 15, chart number 10, whatever. So,
Someone pulled that out of there.
yeah, we were looking to reappropriate the ARPA money from Putnam County. Doesn't look like that's gonna happen. I even went to Mike Lawler's office to try to get some federal relief because it is a federal program, but there is no relief. But Lawler's office steered me to a grant opportunity through, I forget which one of the initials it was, but currently he's exploring that opportunity to recoup money. The argument is that the water itself is not a capital purchase. So you could build the road to truck the water in. We could have bought a truck to truck the water ourselves, do the piping, but you can't buy the product that you need. It just doesn't make any sense to me, but that's the way it's written because it's not a capital purchase. So we are currently seeking, and any other ideas that you have and you'd like to work on, we'll support. I would support it.
So if we see, 'cause I know people email and we see grants and there seems to be like a huge tap of money that's gonna open. If we see grants, should we bring them to the board and see?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we
You
often
can
get.
apply for them yourselves too, Well, I'm just saying, you can. I mean, I haven't done it, but you have the capability of doing that. But the court gets one every single year. My wife's in the process of getting one as well, but I'm just saying, it's not an easy process, obviously.
I do it,
Right, I know.
for my not-for-profit, I do some grant
We'll allow
writing.
you to write ours too, Judy. We are excluded often because of the average income
Right.
in this community, but, which we've seen, so. All right, anything else?
Code enforcement.
No other
Next, sorry.
coding? Go
Yep.
ahead.
Next on the agenda is the Code Enforcement Monthly Report. This is for May 2024. Total fees collected, $41,622.85. Total number of permits issued, 37. There was one new commercial and industrial building, 4 additions, alterations, or repairs to residential buildings, and 32 all other permits.
Anything else from the board?
For new business or anything?
Oh, actually, I do have one other thing, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
The sweet potatoes
was
were
gonna-
planted, is that
I'm
what?
glad you brought that up, because I was gonna.
On Monday, they planted, I think it was 15,000, they're called slips.
Yeah.
Slips, and they put them all, they had a number of volunteers as well as the staff from Daverin Farm. I did go down for a little while, it's an amazing process, the irrigation system is in.
Yep.
The electricity, we're waiting on Central Hudson, but they have a generator there, which they're drawing water from that little creek. So, in October, they're gonna be looking for lots of volunteers and muscle to harvest the sweet potato. So I've been in contact with Haldane, I think it would be a wonderful, opportunity to work that out, so, but, still waiting on an answer.
Yeah, I stopped by too, Johnny. I think I just missed you on Monday mornings, and I just stopped by to say hello and say, and talk to the.
the video.
No, there's no video going on when I was here. But anyway, I think this is a great thing that we're partnered with Daverin's Farm here from property that we really have vacant out there, really wasn't being used. And that's going to help food insecurity here for not only our community, but other communities around our vicinity here. So it's a great thing, and I got to give a lot of credit to Peter Davern for all the work that he does out there. He was there himself there with a pole, making sure the holes were deep enough to put those slips in. So I spent a little bit of time there, but it's just a great thing for if Davern's Farm, it's a great thing for our community as well.
Yes, it is. Wonderful use of the property, so, yep.
I have two other things, if it's okay. All right, well, tomorrow we're going to install an ATM machine downstairs for our convenience. Hopefully, we had some people requested that, it might be a nice thing. So we're going to give it a try. The guy's coming in, there's no cost to us whatsoever, so he's going to be here tomorrow installing an ATM machine. So that's going to be, if people need money here for pay some bills or whatever, have the convenience here, right for here as well. Also, too, last meeting, Martha was here. She said they got a grant for what, $275,000 for solar. So right now, I'm just letting you know, I'm in the process. I got all the electrical bills from the highway department. I just got them yesterday to start that process. So I reached out to a solar company that did the solar down at the rec center. They're in the process now to give me some numbers and so forth like that. We could take that data when we're ready to do an RFP. So I started that process as well. So it's going to probably take some time, but I'm sure I'll probably have a proposal within 2 weeks.
We need a proposal within 3 months, they said, right? What was that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
I got already a preliminary one, but he needed the electric bills, which I just got yesterday, and I sent them to him yesterday as well. So
Thank you, Bob. Anything else from the board? Good. Audience? Yep, either way, doesn't matter. Good. Ladies before gentlemen. Yeah.
I'm here to advocate the board to adopt the local law for the senior citizens exemption. Right now, the level is 29,000 to 37,400. 29,000 most probably is below the the poverty line for United States. Haven't been updated since 2009, which is not correct. My second issue is with the assessor office, who did not distinguish between town taxes and county taxes. He misled everybody who asked for this exemption, and I would like to ask the board to mandate to the assessor to post the information sheet like any other town in the Putnam County. And my third issue is to report the intimidation tactics of Brian Kenny, the assessor. He's supposed only to administer the applications, not to go after taxpayers and accuse them of hiding income. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make one comment there, and that's really to apologize because the town board, we all agreed last year to adopt raising those income eligibility limits for seniors and disabled individuals in Philipstown, like Putnam County did, like the Garrison Union Free School District did. And in all honesty, it fell through the cracks adopting that resolution, and we didn't change it, with some advice from the assessor, and we did not adopt it before the March 1st deadline this year. And so, I want to say I won't speak for anybody else, but I know we all supported that, and I want to apologize for that because I think it's our intention to adopt that income eligibility increase. I'm apologizing for myself, but that was something that I saw fall through the cracks, and I feel bad about it.
Sometime between now and March 1st, we'll work on that. That's for
This
sure.
summer, for sure.
Yeah.
We started working on it, and as Jason said, it just didn't get adopted prior to the deadline. 2 other ones did. I think it was the veterans, was it? Firefighters, but the seniors didn't. But that will be done this year for certain.
that's what the fire
We did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that back to our attention.
Anyone else? Nat?
Speaking of grants,
All right.
we don't want to
Really love
something.
keeping this here.
Hello, everybody. This is Nat Prentice speaking in this case as coordinator of the Philipstown Comprehensive Plan Committee. Just an idea for you, and I have something to take home and have you read, but it has something to do with grants. You may recall that one of the priority items that we've been talking about, although not doing anything about because nothing's come along that's particularly useful, but one of these days a good housing idea will come along for Philipstown, something that will fit and be in the right place and be exactly what we want to do. My suggestion is that we look into becoming designated as a New York State pro-housing community. You don't have to have met the requirements about building X, Y, and Z. You just have to sign a pledge that says you like these principles and you're going to be looking at these kinds of things as they come along. There is a little work that the building department would have to do. I'm going to leave you with a one-pager that shows you what the requirements of becoming a New York State pro-housing community, and you may have read in the Current and other newspapers about the number of our neighbors who have already got this designation. Right. I think what it could mean is if we find the right project and we need a grant or two to help it come to be, if you're not a New York State pro-housing community, you're probably not in line for the grant. And we may have to play catch-up at that sense. This is something we could accomplish. I'm looking for a project. We could get this done this summer. I just need your okay, once you've looked at this, for me to go to the building department and say, we've got to get 5 years worth of this, and we've got to get 4 years worth of that. I'm just going to ask you the question if you think this is worth it. So just going to give you a one-pager.
Thank you. Sounds like a good idea. Hey, while we're talking about the building department also, too, I talked to Greg, our building inspector. And he also spoke to Jeff, the town clerk, used to be the village clerk. He's willing to work like 10 hours a week to supplement there, and Greg is all for it. Just wanted to let you know about that.
Pro-housing community.
Thank you. So we'll digest this and get back to you.
There's probably an extra one.
Here it is, I think so. Here's one.
Here, I'll take it.
Copy right back there.
Thank you.
We actually,
It may not be worth the effort, but it seems easy enough.
Seems, you know, it can't hurt to do it, right?
That we should do.
I just think it's a great way to basically fast track, and make the town competitive for some of the grants you mentioned.
I actually had an interesting,
Yeah, again, this just all assumes that something interesting comes down the line in terms of a housing idea, but if it does, I think we could be ready and be designated.
I had a member of our community that's part of the planning board make a suggestion to do a TOD, which is a transit-oriented development at the Garrison Landing, if we could support it with water, which at some point, when the new well is in, we would be able to support a small development there, which would, there is land there, there is, I mean, this is way out of line, but there is space and there is property there that's privately owned that we could probably develop some.
We need to explore these
It's a big loop. It's a big loop to close.
If we're a pro-housing community,
Right.
we get a little check mark.
Right, sounds good. Thank you, Nat, as always. Anything else? Good? All righty.
We have a couple
Vac-
of vacancies.
Vacancies, we have one for the Board of Assessment Review, which is really a fun group, so. Approval of vouchers, general,
So moved.
second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I vote aye. Highway,
So moved.
second.
Second.
All in favor? And I vote aye. Continental Village Park District,
So moved.
second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Continental Village Water District,
So moved.
second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you all.